It's midnight and you're tuning into Nightline with me, Nurin Razmyn. The top stories. The late Tun Abdullah Ahmad Badawi laid to rest at Warriors Mausoleum with full state funeral honors. And President Xi arrives in Malaysia for highly anticipated state visit. Good morning. The nation mourns the passing of the late Tun Abdullah Ahmad Badawi, Malaysia's fifth Prime Minister. Fondly known as Patla, Tun Abdullah's remains were laid to rest at the Warriors Mausoleum at 2:30 p.m. on Tuesday in accordance with state funeral protocol. The hearse transporting the late statesman's body arrived at the National Mosque from his residence at Persiaran Tuanku Jaafar at 8:15 a.m. His casket, accompanied by his wife Tun Janin Abdullah, was then carried by honor guards into the mosque for the final rites. After his body was bathed and shrouded, the casket bearing the late former Prime Minister was placed at the center of the main prayer hall for the lying-in state. Thousands of people from all walks of life, along with national leaders and dignitaries, came to pay their last respects between 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Among those in attendance was the Sultan of Terengganu, Sultan Mizan Zainal Abidin, who served as the 13th Yang di-Pertuan Agong during Abdullah's tenure as Prime Minister. Also present at the state funeral were Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, Deputy Prime Ministers Datuk Seri Ahmed Zahid Hamidi and Datuk Seri Fadilah Yusof, as well as members of the cabinet. Others who attended to bid farewell to Abdullah included Singapore's former Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong and representatives from various foreign embassies. The funeral prayer was led by the Grand Imam of the National Mosque, Ehsan Muhammad Husni, and was joined by thousands of congregants. Allahu Akbar. Abdullah's casket was then carried out of the main prayer hall and brought to its final resting place at the Warriors Mausoleum. Other than Abdullah's widow, those present during the state burial ceremony included his children, Tan Sri Kamaluddin and Nuri, as well as Nuri's husband, Khairi Jamaluddin, and other close family members. Abdullah passed away at the age of 85 at the National Heart Institute at 7:10 p.m. on Monday due to illness. Meanwhile, four former prime ministers were present at the National Mosque to pay their final respects to the late Abdullah. The sixth Prime Minister, Datuk Seri Najib Razak, was among the earliest to arrive at the National Mosque, reaching the grounds at 10:35 a.m. He expressed his gratitude to the Kuala Lumpur High Court, the government and the Prisons Department for granting him permission to pay his final respects to the late Abdullah. Also in attendance at the state funeral was Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, who arrived at 11 a.m., accompanied by his wife Tun Dr. Siti Hasma Muhammad Ali and their son Datuk Seri Mukris. Mahathir, who served as Malaysia's fourth and seventh Prime Minister, spent about 10 minutes paying his respects and offering prayers for the late Abdullah. Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, the eighth Prime Minister, arrived at the National Mosque at 12:15 p.m. to pay respects to his late predecessor. The Perikatan National Chairman was received by Abdullah's son-in-law, Khairi Jamaluddin. Another former Prime Minister, Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob, arrived shortly after 12:30 p.m. to pay his final respects. The ninth Prime Minister then remained until the late statesman was laid to rest. In paying tribute to the late Abdullah, members of the cabinet described the passing of the fifth Prime Minister as a great loss to the nation. They described him not only as a good leader, but an extraordinary individual.
Beliau telah membawa skor iaitu Sarawak Koridor Renewable Energy yang sekarang ini sangat berjaya. Banyak lagi sumbangan lain, tapi inilah sebahagian daripada sumbangan besar kepada negara dan juga negeri Sarawak khususnya.
Bila dia menjawab jawatan Perdana Menteri, kami daripada pembangkang dapat menjalankan kerja-kerja kami lah dalam parlimen, dan beliau orang yang suka dan sudi mendengar dan tidaklah dianggap pembangkang itu sebagai musuh utama.
Saya secara peribadi adalah orang yang sangat terutama budi pada beliau, kerana jasa beliau, dan kita sentiasa mengingat akan nasihat-nasihat beliau.
Dalam beberapa interaksi saya, sama ada dalam bentuknya mesyuarat maupun pertemuan-pertemuan yang rasmi maupun tidak rasmi, Tuan Abdullah Ahmad Badawi ini adalah tokoh yang sangat disenangi semua, ya.
Allahyarham Tun seorang negarawan yang dalam, in the words of Yang Berhormat Perdana Menteri, seorang negarawan yang membumi. Dan saya secara peribadi juga turut merakamkan ucapan takziah buat keluarga.
Meanwhile, the family of the late Tun Abdullah conveyed their heartfelt gratitude for the honor accorded to the former Prime Minister. His daughter Nurin expressed hope that her late father will always be remembered.
Tapi tetap bersyukur juga kerana melihat kepada keadaan dan penghormatan yang telah diberi padanya dengan ingatan semua dari semua pihak. Kami ahli keluarga memang sangat bersyukur. Alhamdulillah untuk segala-galanya.
The late statesman is survived by his widow, Tun Janin Abdullah, and two children, Tan Sri Kamaluddin and Nuri. In other news, Chinese President Xi Jinping arrived in the capital on Tuesday for a state visit that will run until Thursday. The special aircraft carrying Xi and his delegation touched down at the Bunga Raya complex, Kuala Lumpur International Airport at around 6 p.m. Xi was welcomed by Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim upon his arrival. Also in attendance were Foreign Minister Datuk Seri Muhammad Hassan, Transport Minister Anthony Loke, as well as Chinese Ambassador to Malaysia Wu Yang Yujing. The Chinese leader's visit is at the invitation of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong Sultan Ibrahim, marking the continuation of over 5 decades of diplomatic relations between Putrajaya and Beijing. This is Xi's second official visit to Malaysia since assuming office in 2013. On Wednesday, he will be accorded a state welcoming ceremony at Istana Negara, followed by an audience with the king. His Majesty Sultan Ibrahim will also host a state banquet in honor of Xi and his delegation. Xi is also scheduled to hold a meeting with Anwar to discuss bilateral cooperation. The Chinese president is currently on a tour of several ASEAN countries, including Vietnam and Cambodia. Malaysia is in a unique position to serve as a global example with its multi-ethnic and multi-religious communities living in harmony. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim emphasized that open dialogue among the people must continue in order to strengthen unity, mutual understanding and respect.
They challenge. This is Anwar, under you're too multiracial, you're too kind to the rest, we will fail. I say we fail not because we are friendly with the non-Malays. We fail because we condone corrupt leaders, irresponsible and semi-literate leaders representing our cause.
Anwar said this during his keynote address at the 2025 International Conference on Civilization Dialogue held at University Malaya on Tuesday. The conference focused on the philosophical and ethical values of sustainable development, serving as a platform for the exchange of ideas among academics, policymakers, and the corporate sector. Discussions also encompass issues such as the environment, governance, the circular economy, and urban planning. ASEAN has the potential to strengthen its intra-regional trade and attract strategic investments to boost the economy of its member states. Bank Negara Malaysia Deputy Governor Datuk Marzu Hisham Omar said intra-ASEAN trade currently accounts for 23% of the total exports within the region. He said ASEAN is on the right track to becoming an even more competitive economy, with a combined gross domestic product now reaching $4 trillion. Marzu Hisham also stressed the need to make strategic investments such as in the digital and green energy sectors, highlighting the ASEAN Power Grid project worth $700 billion as an example. ASEAN is also prioritizing the use of local currencies in transactions to reduce its reliance on the US dollar. China has reportedly ordered its airline not to take any further deliveries of Boeing jets, the latest move in its tit-for-tat trade war with the US. According to a report from Bloomberg, the Chinese government has also asked carriers to stop purchases of aircraft-related equipment and parts from American companies. The report added that Beijing is also considering ways to provide assistance to airlines that lease Boeing jets and are facing higher costs. The order from Beijing reportedly came after it announced retaliatory tariffs of 125% on US goods over the weekend. South Korea on Tuesday announced plans to invest an additional sum of nearly $5 billion in the country's semiconductor industry, citing growing uncertainty over US tariffs. The finance ministry said an aggressive fiscal investment plan has been devised to help local firms navigate mounting challenges in the global semiconductor race. It warned that growing uncertainty following rounds of US tariff threats had left the sector clamoring for government support. Officials have now stepped up to provide more cover for economically crucial industry by announcing an extra $4.9 billion of investments through 2026. Immigration officers remanded in 10 million ringgit graft case. This and more from the local front after this breather.
Macam nak tengok video penuh, saksikan video muzik Raya Pop-Pop ditonton. Pop-Pop! Hai Pop!
Kita nak pop, 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 meriah satu kampung pop, pop, pop. Kita kasih Rio sampai besok. Kasih pop, pop, Raya Pop-Pop.
Baik saja tertuduh menyalakan pemeti api, api telah menyambar badan si mati hingga menyebabkan beliau melecur hampir keseluruhan badan beliau.
Siasatan mendapati punca utama kejadian adalah konflik dalam hubungan mereka.
Mati telah melecur terbakar sebanyak 95%.
Lambakan tembikai di pasaran 99 sen sekilo. Apakah puncanya?
Luka akibat melecur, ketahui komplikasi dan juga cara rawatannya.
Jangkitan HIV di kalangan remaja semakin meningkat. Antara puncanya, hubungan songsang.
Halang tugas penjawat awam, anda boleh dikenakan tindakan di bawah Seksyen 186 Kanun Keseksaan.
Soal wang, impak kenaikan tarif Amerika Syarikat ke ekonomi Malaysia dan juga dunia.
Saksikan Malaysia hari ini, Isnin hingga Jumaat jam 10 pagi.
Di TV3 dan juga stream dituntun.
Top 5 Carta Muzik 40 minggu ini.
Thanks for staying with us. 3 immigration officers have been remanded for their alleged involvement in a counter-setting syndicate at Kuala Lumpur International Airport. The trio, all in their 40s, were arrested separately by the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission (MACC) on Monday in Kuala Lumpur, Nilai in Negeri Sembilan, and Johor Bahru in Johor. Magistrate Nur Izzati Zakaria issued a 7-day remand order until April 21st for all 3 suspects at the Kuantan Magistrates Court on Tuesday. According to sources, the officers acted as insiders for the syndicate and are believed to have facilitated the entry of foreign nationals without proper immigration clearance at the country's entry points between 2021 and last year. They allegedly received over 10 million ringgit in bribes, with a portion of the funds purportedly distributed among other immigration personnel. The MACC has seized jewellery and cash and is currently examining several bank accounts believed to be linked to the suspects. Pahang MACC Director Muhammad Syukur Mahmud confirmed the arrest, adding that the case is being investigated under the MACC Act. In Malacca, the MACC remanded a former Dewan Negara Deputy Speaker over allegations of receiving bribes and 4 luxury vehicles worth 44 million ringgit in connection with a land reclamation project. Magistrate Sharda Shienha Muhammad Sulaiman issued a 6-day remand order effective until Sunday at the Ayer Keroh Court Complex on Tuesday following an application by the MACC. According to sources, the 61-year-old suspect, who also serves as the managing director of a company, is believed to have received the vehicles along with cash amounting to 300,000 ringgit from a company owner who has a Datuk title. The bribes were allegedly received between 2021 and 2023 in return for awarding a 100-acre land reclamation project in Kota Laksamana to the Datuk's company. Both individuals were arrested between 4:55 p.m. and 5 p.m. on Monday at the state MACC office after their statements were recorded. Malacca MACC Director Adi Supian Shafi confirmed the arrest, saying that the Datuk was later released on MACC bail. The case is being investigated under the MACC Act. The teenage girl who was abducted in Seremban on April 10th was bound and stuffed into a suitcase before being taken into a hiding place. Bukit Aman Criminal Investigation Department CID Director Datuk Seri Muhammad Suhaili Muhammad Zain said the abduction was orchestrated by a 31-year-old woman who was held along with 5 other suspects. According to Muhammad Suhaili, the 16-year-old victim and her mother went to a salon located at Uptown Avenue in Seremban 2 prior to the incident. The girl was walking to a nearby convenience store when she was grabbed and forced into a 4-wheel drive vehicle where she was bound before being stuffed into a suitcase.
Sejurus menerima laporan tersebut, JSJ Negeri Sembilan telah membuka satu bilik gerakan dan pemakluman kepada Bukit Aman telah dimaklumkan. Saya telah menggerakkan 2 pasukan daripada D9 dan D8 untuk membantu Negeri Sembilan, dan Datuk Fadil juga telah menggerakkan elemen-elemen kami di Selangor dan Kuala Lumpur untuk membantu mengesan suspek-suspek ini.
The victim's family then received a call demanding 2 million ringgit in ransom, prompting them to hand over 280,000 ringgit in cash, along with several pieces of jewellery. It is believed that the kidnappers used a metal detector to scan the money for tracking devices before releasing the teenager in Port Dickson. Following police investigations, 3 men and 3 women were arrested and part of the ransom money, totaling 180,000 ringgit, was recovered. All 6 suspects have been remanded for 14 days to facilitate police investigations under the Penal Code. Authorities are now tracking down another male suspect who is believed to still be at large. On Monday, police shot dead a suspect in Klang, Selangor, believed to be attempting to distance himself from the rest of the group following the kidnapping. In another development, the police reinvestigation into the death of former political aide Tay Beng Hock is in its final stages. Muhammad Suhaili said they are updating the investigation papers as instructed by the Kuala Lumpur High Court and are expected to submit them to the Deputy Public Prosecutor soon.
Ada juga saksi-saksi yang tidak dapat kita temubual semula dan even kita memanggil pihak keluarga juga tidak memberikan kerjasama yang baik untuk memperkemaskan kertas kami ini sebaik mungkin.
On November 21st, 2024, the Kuala Lumpur High Court ordered the case to be reopened and for a comprehensive reinvestigation into all aspects of Theo's death to be conducted. Theo was found dead on July 16, 2009 on the 5th floor of Plaza Masalam in Shah Alam, Selangor, after having his statement recorded at the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission MACC office on the 14th floor of the same building. Singapore to hold election on May 3rd. The details when Nightline returns.
Kalau kita sama-sama, tak ada siapa berani hadap kita.
Aku, Gas.
Habis suruh aku apa?
Macam nak tengok video penuh? Saksikan video muzik Raya Pop-Pop ditonton. Pop-Pop. Pop.
Mana duit? Mana? Bu, duit lu. Hambamu melakukan semata-mata untuk berobat ibuku, ya Allah.
Ingat neraka, nak.
Kamu siapa?
Rumah tangga kita udah lama mati, tau gak?
Wah. Tidak ada yang selamat.
Bantulah hamba keluar dari sini.
Sama-sama refleksi diri di slot Naluri setiap Jumaat 3 petang di TV3 dan stream sekarang melalui Tonton.
Cerita pilihan Syawal ini, jahitan kasih yang tersimpan dalam gerubuk raya.
Kerangka tulang itu adalah milik Fatihah.
Anyaman rindu ketupat terakhir.
Balik cepat sikit. Mari kita menanyam ketupat sama-sama.
Hanyut dalam kesibukan sehingga alpa akan Syawal yang kuinginkan.
Hello Wan, nak apa lagi ni?
Inilah kad yang awak bagi saya dulu tu.
Di cerita pilihan TV3 setiap Sabtu 2 petang dan stream sekarang melalui Tonton.
Top 5 Carta Muzik 40 minggu ini.
On to the foreign front. Singaporeans will head to the polls on May 3rd for the country's 14th general election after President Tharman Shanmugaratnam dissolved parliament on Tuesday. This will be the first general election under Prime Minister Lawrence Wong and Singapore's fourth-generation leadership. The ruling's People Action Party, PAP, in power since 1957, is widely expected to win again. However, its share of the popular vote will be closely watched after the party secured only 83 out of 93 seats in 2020, its lowest in years. This time, 97 seats are up for grabs, with a recent poll showing that 63% of voters would support the PAP, while 15% others would back the leading opposition Workers' Party. The election will take place amid a gloomy economic outlook as U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs threaten to hit activity in the trade-reliant nation. In other news, China has accused the United States National Security Agency, NSA, on Tuesday of launching advanced cyber attacks during the Asian Winter Games in February. According to local media, police in the city of Harbin added 3 alleged NSA agents to a wanted list and accused the University of California and Virginia Tech of being involved in the attacks. The agents were found to have repeatedly carried out cyber attacks on critical information infrastructure and participated in similar attacks on multiple Chinese enterprises. However, authorities did not specify how the 2 American universities were involved.
其中弗吉尼亚理工大学是美国知名的在。
The Trump administration announced a freeze on more than $2.3 billion in federal funding to Harvard University, escalating an ongoing standoff between the administration and elite universities. According to the Education Department's Anti-Semitism Task Force on Monday, Harvard is being penalized for refusing to comply with a series of federal demands aimed at addressing civil rights violations. The freeze includes $2.3 billion in grants and $60 million in multi-year contracts. Harvard became the first major U.S. university to reject the administration's demands, accusing the White House of trying to control its community. The sweeping changes demanded by the White House would have transformed its operations and ceded a large amount of control to the government. Negotiations for a renewed ceasefire and an end to the war in Gaza appear to be at an impasse on Tuesday after Israel issued new stipulations for Hamas to disarm in its latest proposal. Israel issued its latest demands to Egyptian and Qatari mediators on Monday, offering a 45-day temporary ceasefire in exchange for the release of 11 Israeli captives still held in Gaza. In a statement, Hamas said it was reviewing the latest Israeli proposal and would respond as soon as possible. However, a senior Hamas official earlier said the group would not accept any demand to disarm, saying that as long as there is an occupancy, the resistance will continue. Instead, Hamas insisted that Israel commit to ending the war and removing its forces from Gaza, and in return, it has offered to hand over all remaining captives in one batch. Switching to sports now, the Road to Gold RTG Program Committee have made it clear they expect more from their athletes by making selection criteria progressively tougher as the 2028 Los Angeles Olympic approaches. The committee on Tuesday announced names of 16 athletes selected for the RTG program this year. These athletes have fulfilled the current criteria of a world top 10 ranking in their respective events or have previously won an Olympic medal. Youth and Sports Minister Hannah Yeoh, however, said athletes must maintain a top 8 world ranking, finish in the top 8 at the World Championships, or win a medal at the Glasgow Commonwealth Games or Nagoya Asian Games to stay in the RTG program next year.
Menjelang tahun depan, ranking ini akan berbeza, ranking 8 terbaik dunia. Jadi, kita ada KPI untuk mereka. Sokongan ini mesti membuahkan hasil kepada kita.
Out of the 16 athletes selected for the RTG, 13 are from badminton, including professional players such as Li Zijia. The 3 other athletes selected are track cyclist Shafirdal Shahroom and Iza Izati Asri, as well as weightlifter Anik Kazdan. Turning to tennis, the 2025 Barcelona Open. Andrei Rublev and Holger Rune began their respective campaigns with straight-set wins on Monday. World number 8 Rublev stormed to the 100th ATP 500 win of his career with a 6-1, 6-3 victory over Dutch qualifier Jasper de Jong in the first round. Up next, the Russian will take on wildcard Stan Wawrinka or last week's Monte Carlo semi-finalist Alejandro Davidovich Fokina in the second round. In another action, Holger Rune produced a big-hitting response to his recent physical troubles. The 21-year-old struck 28 winners in a 7-5, 6-4 victory over Albert Ramos Vinolas to set up a meeting with Rio de Janeiro champion Sebastian Baez. The Dane was forced to retire from his Monte Carlo opener last week with food poisoning, but bounced back with an impressive all-round performance in Barcelona. And that concludes Nightline this time around. Eternally etched in our nation's history, we remember Tun Abdullah Ahmad Badawi, a beloved leader who served the country with honor. His soul and legacy live on through his meaningful contributions. May he be placed among the righteous. With that, I'm Nurin Razmyn. Thank you for watching and take care, Malaysia.